Hey guys, today we are on chapter 8 of the book of Revelation. So if you remember, chapter 6, we started opening the seven seals on the scroll. And so if you remember, the first seal was the Antichrist, the white rider. The second seal was war. Um, the horse was red, right? The red horse. The third seal was the black horse, which was famine. The fourth seal was the pale or green horse, that was death. The fifth seal was the altar of souls. And the six seals was the cosmological event, right? The earthquake, the sun becoming black, all of the things that the prophets talk about with the coming of Jesus. Then we got to chapter 7. In chapter 7, we kind of came to a pause. In between the sixth and the seventh seal, the last seal opening, which we'll read today, was God sealing 144,000 Jewish people to share the gospel. And then we saw a great multitude of people believing in Christ coming during this tribulation. So today in chapter 8, we pick up on the seventh seal. So this would have been the last seal on the scroll that Jesus is opening. And so when the Lamb, notice that's a capital L, the Lamb, Jesus, opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Now, when you read this, you think a half an hour, that's not really long. But as we've read the book of Revelation, we've seen John's vision, we have noticed over and over again the amount of worship that has gone on, right? The angels, the elders, everybody falling down, worshiping God, holy, holy, holy. And then when the seal is open, there's silence. So even though 30 minutes in the span of eternity is really nothing, 30 minutes of absolutely nothing happening was probably a sobering event. And was there to grasp the reality of what is happening. He says, then he saw seven angels who stand before God, and seven trumpets were given to them. As we read through the Old Testament, we learn very quickly that trumpets only mean one thing. That was the sound for war. And Israel, as they move forward, and as even other nations, as they move forward into war, they would blow these trumpets to communicate to the people that they were going to take over that here we come, right? Ready or not, here we come. So these seven angels blowing these seven trumpets are telling the world, get ready, war is coming, right? Something bad is coming. And then another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar before the throne. A censer is just kind of think of like a box in which there was one in the tabernacle and in the temple, and they would put incense into this box of fire, and it would cause this incense to burn, and this incense would rise up to God, being that the prayers of the people were rising up to God, and it was going to be a sweet smell to God. So here in the middle of this, we have this angel who takes this golden censer, and we learn that it is the prayers of all saints. So before the seven seal goes forth into the earth, after the 30 minutes of silence, we see that God, before anything, hears the prayers of the saints first, right? Which is a good thing, right? God is hearing our prayers. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel. And the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire from the altar and threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Notice that these prayers, that as they're rising before God, he smells them, he sees them. They rose before God from the angel, and then the angel took them, and he took them from fire from the altar, right? This is where the sacrifice would be. He put them in the censer box, and he throws this censer box down to earth. Because we must remember what's happening. We are in the middle of the tribulation. And so what would saints, what would saved people be praying for during the tribulation, for the tribulation to end, right? For God to come back. We have seen and will continue to see how bad it really is on earth. And so basically him taking this box, and God hears the prayers, right? It says it rises up before God, but the angel takes this box and he throws it to earth, basically telling us that all of the prayers of the saints will not be resolved until judgment is complete, until all of this has gone through, right? So God hears the prayers, but he throws them back to earth, signifying that it is not the end yet. There's still more to come. Verse 6, now the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared to blow them. And now we're going to see, even though this is the seventh seal, there's seven trumpets of the seven seals, right? Remember, the word seven is just completeness, right? So the complete opening of the scroll is the seventh seal. The complete opening of the seventh seal is the seven trumpets, right? So just using this seven as a symbolism of saying of God's completeness. And so today we're only going to look at the first four trumpets in chapter 8. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hell and fire mixed with blood, and these were thrown upon the earth. So here we have hell, fire, and it says was mixed with blood. Now, we don't know if this means that it was raining blood, or if it was the color red, or if hell and fire were falling, causing blood on the earth. We're really not sure exactly what that means, but we ultimately knows what it means, right? Hell and fire falling to the earth, and it is killing people. And notice it says, and a third of the earth was burned up. A third of the trees were burned up. And notice all the green grass. So a third of the earth was burned up, a third of the trees, and all the green grass, right? So we can see in this first trumpet, to the earth, it's going to be very devastating. The second angel blew the second trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. So notice it says like a great mountain. Doesn't mean that it is a mountain, that there's a mountain on earth that God's going to pick up and throw in, but like a mountain. Remember, John is seeing this and he's describing this. So the ultimate question is there's a large mass of earth, of land, that is thrown to the earth, and it's burning with fire. Now, we would say, is this a meteor? Is this an asteroid? That would make sense. But we're not really, we're kind of unsure what this means. But if you're asking me, probably some cosmological event of an asteroid and a meteor going. And what happens? It hits the sea. Notice as we read the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, but even in the New Testament, every time the word the sea is used, it is referring to what we call today the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean Sea was the sea. They didn't know about the seven oceans. They haven't sailed around the world yet. And so I believe this is a cosmological event that's hitting the Mediterranean Sea that is close to Israel, right? And Turkey and Africa. It's kind of right there in the middle, right? And notice when it hits the sea, a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. So once again, we're seeing this third. So we've seen hell and fire fall, right? Hell and fire fall, killing a third of the earth. We see this mountain fall, this big, large, massive land fall in. It takes a third of the sea, kills a third of the sea. And then the third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven. Once again, is this a meteor, an asteroid, some cosmological event? But a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of the water. And the name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the waters because it had made them bitter. So here we have another event that something falls into what we would call today the fresh waters, into the rivers, into the streams and the springs of the earth, basically taking away a lot of the drinking water on earth. Wormwood is simply just a an element that means bitterness. That's what wormwood means. It means bitterness. And so in this idea of all of the water, it becomes bitter. We've seen this back in Exodus, where they're walking towards Mount Sinai and they come across water and it is bitter. It is filled with wormwood. And so God tells Moses to throw in this tree, and it sucks up all the bitterness so that they could drink. And so a third of the earth is gone, a third of the ocean is gone, and now we see that a third of the fresh water is gone. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, and so that a third of their light might be darkened, and a third of the day might be kept from shining, and likewise a third of the night. So notice here on the fourth trumpet, it attacks light and darkness. And so it's not like a third of the sun goes out, so the sun just becomes dimmer. What it's talking about is an idea that they have a third day, a third night, and then a third in complete darkness. Okay, so we kind of pick up another time of the day, right? So a third of the sun, a third of this. But in this, notice it says that the moon was struck, the third of the stars, third of light. So there's going to be a lot of darkness. Imagine what would happen in this world if a third of the day was in complete darkness. That would mess people up. Psychologically, it'd mess people up. There wouldn't be enough lights. You could imagine crime would go up. Lots of things would happen in this, right? And we even see Jesus talking about this himself in Matthew chapter 24. He says, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give light. And so even Jesus talks about this, right? So as these trumpets are opening on the seventh seal, we can see it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Verse 13, then I looked and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth as at the blast of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow. John is watching this and he's saying, man, this is really bad. These four trumpets are really, really bad. But then an eagle comes and says, this is not anything yet, right? The next three are going to be superior, worse than these first four. Now, there's a lot of people who put a lot of symbolism in a lot of things and says, well, this could be this, and this could be nuclear war, and this could be that. But the reality is, we don't know that, right? What we do know is that this is going to be a cosmological event that affects not only people, but affects the planet, affects animals, affects the heavens, the space. So this is God's judgment coming down on all things. But notice a couple things here. And we'll continue to see this, right, with these trumpets. These trumpets, notice a third of everything is being killed, is dying. And we look at that and we're like, man, that's terrible. But notice this, in God's judgment on the earth, he's allowing 2/3 to live. He wants 2/3 of the people to see his handiwork, to see his judgment, that they would know that it's God's judgment, so that they would believe in Jesus Christ, that they might be saved. So a third is dying, but in God's grace, 2/3 are being let to live. Right. Another thing is that this is not a full judgment, right? Because it's a third on everything. This is not fully wiping out the earth quite yet. This is not a full judgment. They're just getting a taste of God's judgment. And then also notice that this judgment so far in the first four is not on people. It's on what we would call the order of the universe. Every day we get up, we don't think about the fish in the sea. We don't think about fresh water. We don't think about the sun rising and the moon going and the stars shining, right? These are just things that we take for granted. But in the tribulation, God is reminding every person that's living that you cannot take it for granted, that God has created this. He's created this order, and it was made for us so that we can have a life here on earth. But God is in control of all things, including creation, including the planets and the stars and the water and the fish and the ships and all the other things that we've been talking about. So as we read this, we tend to read to the negative. Man, this is going to be bad, and it is going to be horrible. But when we, as negative humans, right, we see the third, I think sometimes we neglect to see the grace of God allowing 2/3 to stay. Remember, during this tribulation, this is the world in which people who do not believe, right? These are unbelievers of God. And so even in the worst part of time, even though people are coming to faith during this time, the majority of the world are non-believers. God could have just wiped them out just like that, not even had 7 years of tribulation. But he chooses to show them grace, shows them his power, shows them his power over creation and order, and kills 1/3, but gives grace to 2/3 that they might hear the gospel message, accept the gospel message, and change their lives so that they can have a relationship with God. Hope that makes sense, and we will see you tomorrow in chapter 9 as we finish these trumpets. God bless.